Hello, this is the voice of admin, and it's a very big day here at Clan HQ because we're delighted to welcome Michelle Paver. Hello, Michelle.
Hi, everybody.
I understand you've finished writing Ghost Hunter, but you're not completely finished with the manuscript, are you?
That's right. It's a little bit complicated, but I've effectively emotionally said goodbye to it because I've delivered the manuscript, and when I do that, I make sure that I'm completely happy with it. I think it's completely perfect, and then I hand it over to my editor, and she sends it back with just a few little suggestions. So I think I've got probably about 2 weeks' work, just enough to say I'm still attached to Torak's world.
Right. So you're editing at the moment.
I'm waiting for the manuscript to come back. Yeah, it's
Okay.
the beginning of March. And
What actually happens during the editing process?
It's because I've got a brilliant editor, Fiona Kennedy. It's actually quite painless. She sends the manuscript back with very polite little pencil marks, just suggestions about things. They tend to be smallish things, not major. They're never major plot changes or anything like that.
Yeah.
And then it's up to me, whether I say yes or no. Because she's a brilliant editor and she's sort of seen things that I haven't, because I've been so much in Torak's world. I usually agree with about 85% of what she says.
Okay, that's interesting. Well, now we've got dozens and dozens of questions from clan members. So there's far too many, actually, for just one clan cast. So we're going to divide this up into lots of quite short clan casts. So if your question isn't in this one, the first one, don't worry. Listen to the following clan casts. I would just say some questions are duplicated, and if you have asked a question that you already have heard answered, then there is a chance that your question actually won't get directed to Michelle because, well, she's a busy person. We don't want to keep her here all day and all night.
Can I just interrupt there,
Yes.
actually, because you sent me quite a lot of them over the weekend and I read them through, and I just want to say I was really impressed. I'm not trying to flatter anyone, but I was really impressed with the quality of those questions, and the comments were very perceptive, and some of your guesses were brilliant, I thought. Not always right, but very, very good. So, thanks for everybody who sent them in.
Fantastic. All right, let's get straight on. The first one comes from Tsuyoko Artemis, and Tsuyoko says, OMG, I get to ask questions. I actually had quite a few, but here's one. What inspired the Chronicles of Ancient Darkness series?
That's actually a really difficult question.
It is, isn't it?
Because it came about in bits and pieces over many years. To put it briefly, I'd always loved wolves as a child. I wanted a wolf. I'd loved the idea of living in the Stone Age. I tried to write a story at university about a boy and a wolf, but I was still learning to write, so I shelved it. Many years later, I had a terrifying encounter with a bear in Southern California, which kind of made me feel as if I was back in the Stone Age. And so a few years after that, I found this old story I'd written and I looked at it and I thought, I can do something with this and I can set it in the Stone Age. I've shortened that quite a lot, but there is, I think, a full account on my other website, michellepaver.com, if you want to read about it. But as you can see, it came about in bits and pieces, and then there was suddenly a sort of light bulb above the head moment, which was a pretty nice moment.
Yeah, I bet. Wolf13 asks, well, Wolf13 actually starts with a quote from Oathbreaker, page 223, and is the great yew, his birth tree, his mother's death tree. And Wolf13 wants to know, did the spirit of Torak's mother somehow help win his battle atop the tree with the Soul Eater?
That's an interesting comment. I've left it unsaid in the book, and there's nothing as explicit as in the sense of, the mother actually, spirit coming back and helping. But in an emotional sense, of course, she did, because, he knew that even if he'd never met his mother, she had loved him, and he had the medicine horn with him. So her spirit helped him in a way emotionally. Whether it did anything more than that, I think I'm going to leave to your imagination.
All right. And another question from Wolf13. Does any COAD character reflect anyone in real life? For example, have you portrayed yourself in Renn's or Torak's character?
It's very mysterious characters. There's a bit of me in Torak, because like him, I am a loner. I like being on my own, and I wanted a wolf, as I mentioned. There's a bit of me in Renn, because she's quite prickly and she's very critical, and I am just that. There's a little bit of my younger sister in Wolf, actually, who's very curious and very enthusiastic, has very strong feelings. Having said that, that's what started off when I was writing Wolf Brother. Then they start to become their own people. And they're very much their own people now. There's not that much of me left. But that's the way I started with them.
Why has Far's name not been mentioned thus far in the series? Does he have a name?
Well, Far's name hasn't been mentioned because he dies at the beginning of Wolf Brother, and under clan law, you're not supposed to mention the name out loud for several summers. I think it's 5, can't quite remember. That's a very strong belief in many hunter-gatherer cultures, and that's the reason it's not mentioned. And since Ghost Hunter ends 3 summers or 3 winters after Wolf Brother started, you're never going to find out Far's name.
Oh, right. Well, that's something to wonder about, isn't it? Forever. Actually, how big is Torak's world? What is the scale of the maps in the book?
I've never really worked out the scale in terms of miles or anything like that, but because I like to keep it a little bit vague in terms of, day walks. A day walk is rather elastic, really. In Torak's world, they didn't have a set measure for distance, and a day walk in the winter when you're floundering through snow takes a lot longer than in the summer. So their idea of distance was quite different from ours, which is why I haven't got a scale. But that's an interesting question.
And finally, Wolf13 wants to know, if you could change any one thing in COAD, what would it be?
Gosh, this is going to sound really arrogant, but I don't want to change anything. I'm not saying it's perfect, that's for other people to comment on, but I only ever hand the manuscript in, and I only ever say, yes, okay, we can publish, when I'm completely sure that I've got it the way I want it. So, and I take a year to write each of these books. So, no, there's nothing. I did think long and hard about that one, but there isn't.
Atarin wants to know, he says, okay, here's the deal. I want to be an author, and I have a great idea, but I can't seem to get going. My questions are, did you have any special motivation? About how long each day did you write? And how long did it take you to finish your first book?
Did I have any special motivation? Not really. I'm always happier when I'm writing. That's the thing. I wasn't trying to write a bestseller or make lots of money. I'm just happier when I'm telling stories. So that's just something that most writers have inside them, which is just as well, because writing's quite hard work. What was the other question? Sorry, can't remember.
About how long each day, and how long did it take you to finish your first book?
About how long each day, yeah. That, because I'm a professional writer and I have a deadline, I am quite rigid about that. I do try to do at least 6 hours a day, which is a lot, actually.
It is a lot.
I'm not suggesting, if you've got school commitments or whatever, I don't know how old you are, but I'm not suggesting you put yourself through that. But if you're trying to write professionally, it is a good idea to make yourself write every day. How long did it take me to write each book? It takes about 10 months. I'd like a year. But I have quite a lot of publicity, things to do, travelling, research. But yeah, it takes a long time. A lot of rewriting, an awful lot of rewriting. I'll probably come onto that a bit later.
Midnight's Wolf also wants to know about really getting published. And Midnight's Wolf says, we've many aspiring writers on the clan, so some of these questions might benefit us. How many agents did you have to go through before finding Redhammer? Would you recommend aspiring authors find an agent or go to the publishers directly?
Well, you can do either, quite honestly. I know that's not a very helpful answer. I mean, I did either. This is going back a bit. This is in the 80s, I think, yeah. Get the best advice I would give you is get hold of, either buy or get in the library, a book called The Writers and Artists Yearbook. And there's another one called The Writer's Handbook.
That's in the UK, isn't it?
That's in the UK.
Yeah.
There will be books in other countries on how to get published and books for writers. And those will list all the different publishers and agents. I'm sure there are websites. I'm not very internet savvy, but I mean, there will be websites. I would suggest you do a bit of both. You can always send off, what you've written to a few publishers and then send it off to a few agents as well. I don't want to be discouraging, but I had to go through quite a lengthy process. I sent off, to a good few publishers and a good few agents before I found Redhammer. And I've been with them ever since, In terms of an agent or a publisher, it's a good idea if you can to get an agent. And I'll tell you why, because then you can play good cop, bad cop. The agent can be the sort of ask all the difficult questions of the publisher and talk about money and things like that. And I can just go away and write. And I really, really like that. So it is a good idea to try to get an agent. I'm afraid there is no substitute for just keeping on going. The advantage of the handbooks I mentioned or the websites is that they'll tell you a little bit about how to submit your writing, because a lot of publishers will say, well, we only want the first 2 chapters and a synopsis. And that's the same with agents. So if you go and send them a great long manuscript written in violet ink or something, they're not going to look at it. So it's really important to do that, because then at least you give yourself a chance. But there's no substitute for just keeping trying.
Good advice. Midnight's Wolf also wants to know, on average, how many drafts did you have to write per book before you were happy with it and it was ready to be published?
Well, I don't print off every single draft that I write on the computer, so I've never been able to keep an accurate count, but I think it's probably about 40, something like that, 40. That may sound an awful lot, and it probably is, but rewriting is the thing that makes a book a good book. There's a saying, good books aren't written, they're rewritten, and I think that's incredibly true. So actually I like the process of rewriting, because I've got a structure and then I can really get into the story and the characters.
Wolfcrest wants to know, I was wondering if you're going to be having a US tour anytime in the future.
Well, I did 3 US tours at the beginning of the series, so at the moment there are no plans, but that's, I'm only just looking for 2009 and perhaps 2010. So I hope so at some stage, but that's really for my US publishers, HarperCollins. So, they'll probably know more than I will, so you can always write to them.
Are any of the upcoming books going to be published worldwide on the same date?
I don't think so. I'm saying I don't think so. That's almost definitely not. The Ghost Hunter will be coming out in the UK. We haven't even got, I think, a definite publication for that. I think either the end of August or beginning of September. When we're told by Orion, the UK publishers, definitely it will go straight onto the Clan website. But no, I don't think so, not a simultaneous. Sorry about that. I know quite a lot of you in many overseas countries are desperate to get your hands on Oathbreaker. I can only say the best information you'll get is to go to your national publisher, and they'll be able to tell you. I'm afraid I can't tell you.
Have you studied wolves to learn how smart they actually are? You go into such details about wolves' brains and intuitiveness.
I have studied wolves. I mean, I haven't, taken part in a scientific survey on them or anything like that, but I've read ever since, I was a child, really. I've read that there are various classic studies on wolves by people like David Meach. So I've read those. I've read what the scientists have done. And then, of course, I've actually met them, and that really is just as important. I go up to a place called the UK Wolf Conservation Trust in Berkshire, and I've been going for years now, so I've got to know the wolves, and some of them have grown up with me. And that really helps to spend some time with them and get to know them, try to imagine yourself into their skin.
Tofi wants to know, do you have a family member, friend, or even a pet that's inspired you to keep writing, even if you have doubts? Have they always been there for you to encourage you with no words, if it was a pet? Maybe their attitudes were reflected in Torak or Renn or Wolf.
Gosh, that's an interesting question. There's been nobody, partly because I'm a loner, nobody who sort of reads my work and says, come on, you can do it, or anything like that. And I wouldn't want that. My agent is looking and sort of pointing to himself. Well, yes, of course, that was at a later stage. No, I think what has encouraged me, and I don't have pets at the moment because I'd love a dog, but I do too much travelling, so it wouldn't be fair on them. I think what has encouraged me really from a very early time, I'm sorry to be sounding corny, has been my mother, just because whenever she does something, she does it as well as she possibly can. And that kind of sank in very early with me. But no, when I was learning to write, I just wrote on my own, and I didn't talk about my work to anybody. I didn't send it to anybody. I think that's quite good training, really. You have to believe in yourself when you're a writer.
Blackadder says, hi Michelle, your stories rock. I still haven't read Oathbreaker though. On to my question. I'm Canadian, so I don't know the British way. Is an elk a moose or an elk in Canadian terms? Because red deer is supposed to be elk in Britain, and lots of the things for the so-called elk is moose, e.g. the calf rejecting. So what is it? Well,
let me just clear this up. First of all, the red deer in England is not an elk. It's a red deer. So that's one thing. I'm sorry if there's been confusion about this. I did actually try to tell my US publishers about this when Wolf Brother came out, but anyway, that's another matter. elk, the European term elk, is what North Americans will call a moose. In other words, it's got a very long nose and long stilt legs.
And they're big, aren't they?
And they're very, very big indeed. So you're right that in Outcast, for example, when there's the lone elk who's wandering around, who's been kicked out by his mother, if you were a North American, you say, oh, that's a moose. But I took the view that, well, in Europe, and these books are set in Northern Europe, we'll come on to that in a minute, I'll call it an elk. So I know that's a bit confusing, though, because in North America, an elk means a sort of red deer. I think the American Indian term is wapiti. So it all gets very complicated. But yes, when you're reading the books in Canada or in the States, when I say elk, you can think moose.
Okay, I hope that's clear. White Spirit Rose has actually got lots of questions. I've just picked 3 because many of them have been asked by other people, or going to be asked by other people. And White Spirit Rose wants to know, what do you love most about your characters, stroke series?
Wow. That is really difficult because there's so much that I love. I mean, it's going to sound weird, but I really like the Soul Eaters because they're terrific fun to write. They're all so different and they're all evil in their own particular way. So I love those. I suppose my favourite character is probably Wolf because I love writing from his point of view. I love being a wolf when I'm writing him. I suppose in general, though, it's the closeness with the natural world. I really like that. I like the fact that, I get to talk about all the plants and the animals. That's probably my favourite.
White Spirit Rose also wants to know, what clan would you say describes you?
I think probably the Raven clan. You might think I'd say Wolf, but although, I'm a loner, like many of the Wolf clan, I like the Raven clan the best, I think, because they're moderate. They're not religious fanatics like the Deep Forest clans. They have quite a nice lifestyle. They've got a great leader in Finkheadin. So I think, probably Raven.
And now, who is your favourite author and series?
I don't think I've got a favourite series. Favourite authors, I've got loads and loads of authors I love. But, if someone put a gun to my head and said, no, you've got to choose one, I think it will probably be J.R.R. Tolkien, The Lord of the Rings.
Runu wants to know... and this is from South Africa, actually. Runa says, hi, first I would like to say that I really like your books. I always get them as soon as they come out in SA and read them in half a day. And here's my question. Did you purposely make it so that the title of each book is what Torak is? Like he is a wolf brother, he is a spirit walker, etc.
Yes, I did. It just came that way when I was planning the series. The series didn't take very long to just get the shape of. It was about a week, a magical week, when I was trying to work out what was going to happen to Torak, and they just came naturally with each book what Torak was going to be.
The listener says, hey Michelle, I'm one of your biggest fans. Actually, everyone says I'm one of your biggest fans, and have read each of your books 142 times. I'm crazy. Just wanted to ask if Renn and Torak will ever get together. By the way, are you coming back to Reading to the UK Wolf Trust for a visit? Because if you are, I would love to meet you again.
Well, I hope to be coming back to Reading at some stage. I haven't worked that out yet, but details will be on the clan website as soon as that's arranged. Do Torak and Renn ever get together? Well, I know the answer to that, of course, but I'm not going to tell you. You'll find out in Ghost Hunter, that's all I can say.
Yeah, a lot of people want to know that. Recan says, as a writer myself, I have a few things that really help me get down to plotting. I was wondering if there's anything that really helps you get into the story. Music, items from your research, photos, other books?
I never use music. I find that interferes with things. I've just had a big window put in where I write so that I've got a really nice view of the garden, which is tiny, but it's got a great big pear tree and lots of squirrels and things. So staring out the window helps me quite a lot.
A lot of people want to know about how you write, and in fact, our writers themselves. Broken Spirit says, I have to write a fantasy book for a school assignment, but I'm a bit stuck with the names. Because of all the special and beautiful names in the Chronicles of Ancient Darkness, I'd like to ask you, how do you get proper names for the characters?
Yeah, that took days, actually. It was quite fun, but what I did was I looked at sort of names and languages from the places where Torak's world is set, up in northern Norway and Sweden and Finland. just the sounds, not the actual names, and then I sort of played around with the different sounds. I also used some names and sounds from ancient Egyptian, Anglo-Saxon, that's Old English, and I'm afraid I just sat there with a blank sheet of paper and played around with them until they fitted the character. That's all I can say, really.
Okay, Wolf Moon asks, in Oathbreaker, the wolf clan leader said Far was able to become a wolf, and Far knew a lot about wolves' sight. Was he a spirit walker? And he knew so much by spirit walking into one.
You've been reading the books very carefully. Yeah, well done for picking that up. There's a bit in Spirit Walker when Tenris has just discovered that Torak is a spirit walker, and he's explaining to Torak what it's like, and he says, it's so difficult, what you can do really easily. The best mages have tried really hard, and one managed it for just a few seconds. Well, he didn't say seconds. And Tenris was talking about his brother, Far, Torak's father. Because yes, Torak's father he was the wolf mage, he did manage it just for a few moments, for a few heartbeats. And that's why he knows what a wolf sees and that he can't perceive colour. But it was very, very brief.
Very perceptive there. And finally, we're going to end the first clan cast with, but not the last by any means, we've got lots more questions to go through, with a question from Jessie of the Bear Clan, who says, Michelle, I love to read and write and find monsters and creatures in stories so amazing. But I've never read anything so subtly frightening as the Tokoroth. Their ability to watch you without your knowing, and the way even their name strikes fear into your characters is so brilliantly written. The way you describe their creation sends a chill down my spine. So, I have to know, where did your inspiration for the Tokoroth come from?
Well, I'm glad you're scared, Jessie, because I was too. And you might be even more scared to know that something like Tokoroths used to exist. I got the idea from the country where I was born, in Malawi. It was then called Nyasaland. And the actual creature is called a tokolosh. And it's a legend, but it's based in reality, because what used to happen, and I stress this doesn't anymore, is that a medicine man, a sangoma, in the wilds of Africa, would steal a child when it was very young and then bring it up in an atmosphere of great evil. And sometimes twist its limbs and do horrible things to it. I'm not going to go into more detail because that's going to give you nightmares. Yeah. And then this little child who had been twisted and trained to be evil would be then sent out to do the witch doctor's evil will. And I'm sure the witch doctors believed that they had implanted a demon in that child. And that's what gave me the idea. As a child, I've always found anything very small and evil to be extremely scary. So there you go.
And it's really creepy. Thank you so much, Michelle. You made a lot of people very happy just now in the first clan cast, but by no means the last. If your question wasn't answered in this one, well, listen to the next one. See you later. Bye.